The past 5 days were difficult for everyone in the team. The sense of threat was always there despite them hiding far from the steel fortress. A squad of Decepticons patrolled right past them every 2 hours. They almost got discovered in the first few patrols due to the scent of the Autobots they possessed. The team had to back off 50 meters further. Even communication between the two groups became difficult. Xian, what are you really thinking? Zheng poked the campfire and asked. It's only my intuition, but I feel that you are scheming something. Same with Honglu. What are the two of you planning to do? Understand that you two are still part of the team no matter how smart you are. Don't make plans based on however you want. Xian turned around and glanced at him. He did not say anything, then continued eating his food, a bunch of bananas he brought from Shelter 1. Zheng was defeated seeing Xian didn't talk. He turned to the other members and especially chatted with Lan. The main focus of conversation was on the psyche scan. The area 50 meters beneath the fortress have been converted into several floors. Each of these floors is larger than the fortress above ground and bigger than the original St. Louis. I can't probe further than 50 meters downward. It feels like it's being masked. Lan said with her eyes closed. A warm breath of air blew by her ear. She opened her eyes in a shock and saw Zheng spoke next to her ear. Don't just focus on the scan. Say, what do you think will happen between the two of them? Lan was surprised. Zheng gave a nod. She touched her forehead then muttered. I think the highest possibility is they diverged on the plan concerning nuclear weapons. Or perhaps they both have their own plan regarding nuclear weapons. The details are beyond my ability. Don't you feel suspicious that Honglu chose Yinkong? Suspicious? Zheng became curious. Of what? Yinkong was the key to stealing the nuclear arsenal password. I can control a person temporarily, but I can't insert a piece of information into a person's mind and hypnotize him for days like movies and novels depict. The password is dynamic, so sneaking to the secret place was their criteria. Yinkong could put the CD into the computer while I controlled the president temporarily. Lan said. Yeah, that's Xian's plan. There doesn't seem to be anything suspicious on this. Zheng looked to Lan and saw a smile on her face. A thought suddenly struck his mind. I get it. The CD was in Yinkong's hand during that time. Only she knows what Honglu could have done on the CD. That's why Honglu chose her. Her close combat ability is less effective than Kampa and Wangxia in enacting the bait plan. Even Gondo would be more useful than her. Lan just smiled without responding. Her gaze was tender. Although Zheng still didn't know what Honglu did, but if Yinkong helped him complete the plan and hid the fact, it shouldn't have a big impact on the team. Honglu was still a boy after all. He might be smart, but he would get influenced by his emotions. As long as he did not cause a negative impact on the team, it was fine to let him contend with someone stronger than him. However, Lan Shi had been quiet ever since being revived. Zheng occasionally could feel her gaze. Most of the time she played her role as the Psyche Force user in the team to the best of her ability, but beyond that, her sense of existence in the team was thin. Zheng knew what Lan was planning. She was attempting to shut herself off using this method. The distance between the two of them would grow with time until they become strangers to each other. On the edge of a tiny forest far from Zheng's camp was Honglu's group. They backed off further from the fortress due to a lack of a Psyche Force user in the group. Yinkong was proficient in hiding, so there was no need to worry about being discovered. They sat by a small campfire and ate some simple foods. So the CD is confirmed to have inserted into the black box? Honglu asked for the third time. Yinkong nodded. Yes. It was indeed inserted into the black box along with Xian's program and your program. Honglu let out a sigh of relief. Then does Xian know? Have you told him about the CD? Yinkong raised her head and glanced at him. Her tone remained calm. I didn't say anything unnecessary. We cooperated a few times before. Do I seem like someone who would talk more than needed? Honglu laughed. Relax. I am only being so overly suspicious because I want the plan to succeed too much. Haha. There's nothing to worry since Xian doesn't know what I did. Tomorrow is the beginning of the 5th day. Just wait. Wait for the arrival of the hydrogen bomb. Honglu was a cooperating partner for Yinkong before she met Xian. Although they worked in Resident Evil, she had just as much trust in Honglu as she had in Xian. However, since Xian had proved himself to be one step ahead of everyone, she decided to remain neutral in this competition. Back in the shelter, Honglu told her his plan in full. She weighed the pros and cons of the plan, then decided to help him. There were almost no cons for Honglu's plan. In contrast, it would lower the danger they would face if it worked. Honglu wrote another program in Xian's CD that would activate 3 hours after the hydrogen bombs launched. It's just a small Trojan. Xian's program can break through the firewall and bypass the network password. So the code of this Trojan is fairly small. Its main function is to issue an attack order to the American army on standby outside the steel fortress. The time is 3 hours after the nuclear strike. Honglu wanted to compete with Xian, but he wasn't going to doing anything harmful to the team. He merely wanted to show Xian that he wasn't weak. Maybe not as strong as Xian, but he could think of things that Xian didn't think of, such as using the American army. Information exchange is crippled due to the loss of satellites and cities. Only a few military communications lines are preserved. They can still send Morse code telegrams, but this method is too slow. I left the president a message before leaving, telling him we have a bacteria that accelerates the rusting process which counters the transformers. Once we found their main base, we can annihilate them. However, I am an American troop in the future and want to leave the US with some useful technology and the Allspark. So he needs to surround St. Louis with the army. Once we destroyed the robots with the bacteria and obtained the Allspark, the army could detain us. The truth is to have the American army surround St. Louis. 3 hours after the nuclear strike, the Trojan will issue an order to attack the fortress in the name of the military base. Xian's virus will destroy the central computing system afterward. No one can stop the American army from attacking at that point. This is my plan, to have the army become our bait. While they fight the Decepticons, Zheng's group can easily sneak into the fortress and steal the Allspark. Xian, wait and see. I am not weaker than you. My plan is designed with you in mind. The sun rose on the horizon. Dawn of the 5th day came. Over 500,000 soldiers surrounded St. Louis in the past few days. They were awaiting for the order from the base. This was the last full army of the US. They would attack into the main base of the Decepticons. Humans began with fire from wood, to fire from charcoal, to coal, to fossil fuel, and natural sources such as hydroelectric, wind, solar. All sorts of energies had always existed around us, waiting for people to discover and gain control of their usage. There was only one type of energy humans obtained by altering natural structures. It was a big leap in our understanding of the universe. The development and usage of nuclear energy. The success of altering atoms and the conversion between mass and energy signified our advancement in our knowledge of the universe and also brought forth a danger beyond anything that had happened in our history. Humans became threatened by our own weapons. A push of a button could put an end to human history. Can't stop it? Deep beneath the ground of Shelter 1, hundreds of people were rushing to repair the huge central computer, the center of information exchange of the United States. It could send messages to anywhere within the US as long as the receiving end still had its military lines intact. Sparks were flying off the central computer's hardwares. Of course, the main issue wasn't hardware related. A virus that infected the computer drove it to overload. If this state continued for 30 more minutes, the central computer would be fried. Cut off its power supply. All important personnel evacuate from the lower floor. Roosevelt listened to the reports, then sent out the order. The lieutenant who reported to him replied, "Mr. President, this isn't possible. The power supply room has been sealed off. The central computer gained automated control of the defense system. We aren't able to enter it in a short period of time without resorting to heavy firearms and explosives. Furthermore, looking at the output from the central computer, any attempts to damage it will make it conclude the base has been occupied. And the consequences? Self-destruction. I also put down my signature when this base was built. The central computer has the permission to self-destruction the base in order to prevent our enemies from obtaining any technology and classified files in the event this base is occupied." Roosevelt sighed. "Let's evacuate first. It's disastrous." A black major came in the room shouting, "Password to the nuclear weapons has been generated. It's being verified through the black box. Once the verification completes." Roosevelt's face turned pale. He ran out the room without a moment of delay. People were running to him on his way. Despair was overtaking him as he heard the incoming reports. "The password to the first hydrogen bomb has been sent. Our communication to the nuclear carrier submarine 3 was cut off. The hydrogen bomb probably has been launched already. The second password was sent. Communication to nuclear carrier submarine 6 was cut off. The third password is being verified." The stress was nearly giving Roosevelt a stroke. He rushed into the lobby shouting. The lobby was filled with people, researchers putting all their efforts on the central computer and people staring at the big monitor, seemingly frozen in place. White codes flowed through the monitor and before long, a set of numbers appeared for an instant before it faded. "Hurry. Destroy the central computer even if it's at the cost of the base." Roosevelt shouted in madness. He knew what the numbers signified, and what a hydrogen bomb meant in the current state of this world. A hydrogen bomb could lead to the end of the world. Pa! Darkness overtook Roosevelt. He collapsed on the floor. A major standing behind him sighed. The major shouted to the rest of the people after knocking Roosevelt unconscious. "Everyone evacuate the base. Set up timed bombs to detonate the central computer once everyone is out." The frozen crowd began running again. However, it was to leave the base this time. The major sighed again as he carried Roosevelt to the elevator. "Sir." A voice came from behind the major. The major replied, "What's it? Another hydrogen bomb launched?" "No. The central computer issued another order to command the army surrounding St. Louis to attack after the third hydrogen bomb." The person reported. The major said, "Is that so? If all 3 hydrogen bombs are targeting St. Louis, our loss is almost negligible. And it would not turn out as worse as expected if we can put an end to this calamity. The result is better than humans being wiped out by nuclear weapons." However, panic never left the other person's face. Right after this order, the central computer issued another order. A 4th hydrogen bomb is to strike St. Louis 3 hours after the third strike. This will be the time when our army reaches the center of the city. Xian stood on a large boulder looking out at the steel fortress in the distance. Strangely, he wasn't wearing his usual glasses but a pair of sunglasses instead. He gave off a sense of freedom. 20 more minutes and the first hydrogen bomb will strike this place. Judging by our position, a gale will sweep over us. However, it shouldn't affect us. Xian said calmly. Zheng sat on a hill not far away. He was also wearing a pair of sunglasses and looking out. He nodded but couldn't find any word to respond. His mind was on the hydrogen bomb that was going to come. Humans. Xian suddenly turned around and looked to Zheng. What are humans? I have tried to induce what exactly are humans from scientific and historical literatures long ago. Although humans are defined as primates, ruler of earth, lord of all beings, but what are humans? Kindness, evil, good, bad, surviving, and death. Is he being emotional? Could Xian even be emotional? Zheng looked at him with surprise and asked. What do you mean? Did anything happen to you? Why did you suddenly talk so strangely? Are you not feeling well? Xian lightly laughed. Even though it seemed like a mechanical movement of the muscles to Zheng, it represented the unusualness happening in Xian's mind. Perhaps you couldn't understand this with your intelligence. To put it in another way, I remember you were once asked if you could dirty your hands to survive. Your answer was you could dirty your hands but not your heart. The time to face your consciousness has come. Do you still wish to live on if your heart has been stained? A projectile glided across the sky behind Xian, leaving a trail of white smoke that nearly separated the blue sky in halves. At the front of the trail was an intercontinental nuclear missile. Xian turned around just as the missile landed on St. Louis. The rolling mushroom cloud rose hundreds of meters high in an instant. The orange cloud shrunk inward abruptly. Its color turned white in the next instant. It radiated light and heat like a mini sun. The white fireball exploded with might greater than before. A gigantic white mushroom cloud rose up the sky again. Should I call this beautiful or terrifying? Zheng took off the sunglasses. He noticed his body was able to withstand the bright white light without the sunglasses. It was a bit glaring but bearable. He looked straight into the white flame with his bare eyes, dazzled by the rapidly changing forms of the cloud. Zheng was having a bad feeling from what Xian had just said. Based on Xian's personality, he wouldn't do or say anything needless. If Xian wasn't referring to something, then there was a new scheme targeting him. It makes me worry no matter how I see this. Would be good if Honglu's here. He could at least deduce what Xian is thinking. How is it going at their side? Can the three of them safely lure away the Decepticons? Can Honglu's plan succeed? Has Xian really not noticed it? Zheng pondered, but his thoughts became a mess and he had to stop thinking. He put his attention toward the unique scene in front. Explosion from the most powerful nuclear bombs was a unique sight in some sense. 2 more intercontinental nuclear missiles struck the ruin that was St. Louis within the next hour. That endless mushroom cloud, the burning flame and shockwaves turned this place into a white-colored hell. The brightness was not that far away from that of the sun. They couldn't see through this light into the fortress inside. The 3 hydrogen bombs were indeed extremely powerful. Stones brought up by the gales flew with the force of bullets. The team had to hide behind objects and wait for the gales to weaken. The gales died down as time passed. The incoming wind still carried an intense heat wave. Once the heat wave also died down, Lan said in a low voice. Something's off, Zheng. A lot of American troops and tanks are marching from the west toward the center of explosion. Were these troops gathered there the whole time? An army? Zheng was surprised. He looked to Xian. Is it your plan to let the army attack the fortress once the nuclear strikes are over? It's a good thing for us whether they could obtain the Allspark or not. It takes less effort to seize the Allspark from the military, or they could expend the forces of the Decepticons and help us. Xian shook his head. First, this isn't my plan. Second, 1,000 normal robots can wipe off this army. They won't kill off a large number of robots as you imagined. So. On the other side of St. Louis, the other group was watching the American army march toward the fortress. The troops wore biohazard suits. The tanks drove in the center of the army. There were also military trucks and motorbikes. The American army suffered huge losses in this disaster, but their old stockpile of military vehicles could still arm a decent army. An army of several hundred thousands attacking one area appear mighty, but the power of their weapons, especially without air support, could only attract the attention of most of the robots. Relying on them to take out robots in a large quantity isn't going to happen. Honglu wasn't looking well. Kampa nodded. The American military is powerful, but that is built on the basis of the quality of their soldiers and top-of-the-line equipment. When the equipment declined by so many generations, their strength is greatly affected. Human wave attacks are useless against robots. Honglu nodded. Right. The American army alone isn't a safe bet. We should follow them into the fortress. We can lure a few more robots away while they battled the robots. Honglu got up and was going to walk out from their hiding place. Yin Kong suddenly grabbed a hold of him. No. We can't leave here until after the American army entered the fortress. Honglu was surprised. Oh. Why? What's wrong with sneaking behind them? Xian said to me when he handed me the CD. Yin Kong said calmly. If you took the CD away and set up the American army to march into the fortress, I will have to stop you from following them until the whole army entered the fortress. Honglu's mind was lost for a moment and asked. Why didn't you tell me what Xian said beforehand? Yin Kong gave him a good look. I also didn't tell Xian your plan. I said I won't help either of you. Honglu had no energy to listen to what she say anymore. He crouched and grabbed the hair in front of his forehead as he pondered. That means he knew I would scheme the American army since the very beginning? Where did he get such confidence? And why did he have Yin Kong stop me from following the army? If I am in the same situation, If I knew he would set up the American army to attack the fortress after 3 hydrogen bombs struck the place, a lot of the normal robots have been destroyed by this point, the only thing I would do is, Hong Lu's expression changed. He raised his head at once and looked to the sky. Nothing. Yet, he still searched in panic. After quite some time, he dropped to the floor, looking defeated. Sigh. It isn't here yet, but by the time the American army reach the fortress, the final strike will come. Damn it. I helped him complete the final step. Couldn't he smell the scent of blood on his hands from wiping off several 100,000 people at once? Kappa and Yinkong seemed confused. Kappa asked. What happened? Isn't your plan going well? Even though the army's strength declined, but they could still hold off a lot of robots. Is there a flaw in the plan? Hong Lu said, a little depressed. The biggest flaw is their strength is too low. They could hold the robots only for a limited time and couldn't destroy that many robots. If anything goes wrong, the other group will get sandwiched by robots from 2 sides. This isn't allowed to happen. Both Xian and I speculated the Decepticons have a barrier-like technology. Can the hydrogen bombs break the barrier? Can the bombs break the core defense after tearing apart the steel fortress? Nuclear bombs are powerful, but even humans have created shelters, so not to mention the aliens with more advanced technologies. The only way to actually kill off the robots in large number is to strike them when they opened up their defense system to fight the human army. Kappa and Yinkong's expressions also changed. Even someone like Yinkong seemed rather shocked. However, they felt this was the kind of means Xian would use. Apathetic. And only people like Xian would come up with such plans. The American army marched into the ruin that was St. Louis. Hong Lu's group could hear the explosions and gunfire coming from the city center. The battle became increasingly intense and continued for 10 minutes. Suddenly, another intercontinental nuclear missile crossed the sky and flew toward the center of the battlefield as though to prove what Hong Lu just said. Its flight merely took a few minutes. The missile did not explode above the city like the 3 before. It drove right into the ground and then a deafening explosion followed. That's basically the current situation. This hydrogen bomb exploded after it entered the ground. Its goal is to destroy the extremely tough military infrastructure. I believe the robots are reduced to a point where we can take rest for 3 hours. We can attack once the temperature cools. Xian muttered as he looked out at the dust that was brought up hundreds of meters in the sky. He ignored Zheng, who was looking at him with the eyes of a murderer, and the rest of the members, who were utterly shocked. The hundreds of thousands of the American army were erased from the earth in an instant. Can I dirty my hands in order to survive? Zheng once asked himself. His answer was he could dirty his hands but not his heart. Can I dirty my heart in order to survive? Once a person resorted to any means necessary in order to survive, would he still be the same person? If he could abandon his comrades and live by standing on their dead bodies, or seize points and rewards from the newbies like those teams he encountered, would he still be himself at that point? So he could not dirty his heart in order to survive. He would not be the same person once his heart strayed away. If he wasn't him anymore, what difference was it from dying? Yet, could he dirty his hands for the people he cared? Zheng was originally furious. He wanted to beat Xian up terribly. He could stand the typical schemes. There was no way to avoid all casualty in a war. However, gloom and guilt covered his heart when hundreds of thousands of people were used as bait and killed for just a plan. Zheng stopped himself from taking pointless actions. It was useless to beat up Xian, who had no sense of pain. The best thing he could do was calm down and think over the upcoming steps. The truth was his hands were stained with blood since entering this realm. Just like how he killed the troops in Starship Troopers in order to survive. The excuse he gave himself was those troops were going to die anyway. So painless death by him was better than dying to the bugs. But now, there was no more excuse he could find for the death of the soldiers. There's no way to redeem what has already happened. The core of the problem is my lack of power. If I am strong enough to overcome the number of robots, you wouldn't have to resort to such plan and turn hundreds of thousands of people into baits. I cannot accept your methods, but I will carry out my duty as the leader, to protect my team and to lead my team to live on. Zheng sounded bitter, yet determined. Xian nodded quietly as he continued to stare at the dust in the sky. After some time passed, he said. We can enter in approximately half an hour. I won't hold you accountable for what can't be reverted. However, I have my principles. If you drag so many innocent people into your plan again, I will still stop you. Zheng said. He stood up and looked to the distance. The US was done. The guild had taken a large part of his mind, but he could still see that the US was done after Xian struck them so hard. The civilizations on Earth will likely fall back 100 years after the robot disaster. However, it might be a good thing for some nations and ethnic groups. When everyone starts at the same starting line and carries the same shame of being weak, the diligence and courage of each nation's people will decide who could climb to the top. Lan quietly said from behind. It seemed like she recovered a little after Zheng actively sought to take to her. Though her tone was still rather indifferent. Zheng nodded. He estimated the time then stood up. We will ambush the fortress now. Visibility near the fortress is very low. So Lan will use Psyche scan and send the information to each of us. 0. Find a high point on the outer layer of the fortress and snipe with the help of Soul Link. Kill off any robot that is still alive and comes out. Hung, your duty is to protect 0. Your bow doesn't work as well in narrow spaces. Ten Yi, Lan, Xian, and Cheng Xiao stay here. Wang Xia, Gondo, and I will execute the ambush. Our mission isn't to kill the robots but to dash inside and obtain the Allspark. Xian interrupted him. I will come with you. I made a little breakthrough on using the Lambda driver. I shouldn't be far off from you in terms of compatibility. Zheng looked at Xian with surprise. He did not really concur with non-combat members participating in a fight directly. However, if Xian said this, he should be confident with himself. The Lambda driver was powerful and left a deep impression from its testing back in God's dimension. Zheng didn't stop Xian. He nodded then began running to the center of the explosion. The dust brought up by the explosion rose hundreds of meters high. Visibility was reduced to less than 100 meters as the team entered the explosion area. And this number continued to decline as the radiation-covered dust fell from the sky. In the end, they could only see up to 10 meters. Anything beyond was masked in gray. This did not cause any huge issue though due to the existence of the Psyche Force user. As the team advanced forward, large amount of ruined metal came into their views. They could make out the original forms of some pieces, mostly metal arms, legs, or parts of a robot, but they did not see any whole robot. The ground was wiped flat. The remaining structures from St. Louis and the metallic structures built by the Decepticons all disappeared. The ground had cracks and appeared glazed. The heat turned the ground into glass. It was still burning after so much time had passed. We are here. Images from the Psyche scan showed a hole several thousand meters wide and nearly 1,000 meters in depth in front. What was shocking was a translucent light field deep below the ground. The site verified Xian's speculation that the robots had a barrier-like technology. The hydrogen bombs alone could not break open the core of the base and not to mention annihilating the robots. Let's go. The American army had been killed by the hydrogen bomb but the outer and middle layer of the fortress were also destroyed along with their deaths. Only the core area 1,000 meters under the ground remained. It would be lame to let the negative feelings overcome him at this point. Zheng did not mention the army again. He had Zero and Hung stand by on a high point and gave Lan a few advices. Then he stepped onto the sky stick and brought the others down. Let's go fight. Feeling terrible right now. I want to let it all out in a fight. Zheng did not mention the army but he felt a fire burning in his heart. He wanted to find a battlefield and kill a few thousand robots to soothe the fire. As he unsheathed Tiger's soul, the adverse aura added to the fire and multiplied the killing intent he had. The refined chi covered Tiger's soul and reduced the adverse aura by a bit. Zheng did not try to restrain the aura though. All he had at this time was a sea of killing intent. The sky stick flew down nearly 1,000 meters. As it reached 20 meters from the barrier, Zheng roared then leaped at the barrier. The sword slashed downward. A faint image of a white tiger appeared around him. The sword cut through the barrier and the sky stick flew inside. The other three people heard Zheng shouted. We are going to put our lives on the line. Xian, put away the sky stick. Wang Xia, plant plasma bombs over the place. Gondo, wreak havoc with all your firepower. Let's destroy the Decepticons' base. The anger within Zheng was one of mixed feelings that he couldn't describe. The core of it was his guilt toward the hundreds of thousands of soldiers who died and his sense of helplessness in changing the situation. This helpless sensation had begun to accumulate long before this event. The precise time chased back to when he first entered this realm. Helplessness when faced with the movie worlds, when placed in a fate unknown to him, when the end was nowhere to be seen. He strived to become stronger, yet there were still so many stronger than him. This weight continued to exert so much pain. And there were the times he did things against his heart in order to survive. Humans weren't robots. They weren't protagonists in novels who could slaughter people the moment they appeared in texts. He was merely an office worker. He had been changing himself, becoming stronger, but his heart was not the heart of a monster. His heart was still the heart when he was a normal office worker. How could he not feel lost after he encountered so many deaths and endured so much pain? How could he not feel angry? The anger of his lack of control and of fate. 1,000 meters beneath the ground. Tiger's soul slashed open the barrier and revealed a corridor made of metal. The corridor was 30 meters tall and 70 meters wide. It could be seen that the hydrogen bomb had crushed this corridor. The barrier that just appeared was created in a rush. That was why Zheng was able to slash it open in one hit. The four people moved into the corridor. Gondo, remember. If we seize the Allspark, grab it and fly back the way we came. Once you exit this corridor, activate the electric jet system and fly as fast as you can to as far as you can. I will cut the corridor off and have Wang Xia detonate the bombs we plant once you left into the corridor. It will stop the robots chasing you. It takes an hour after we obtain the Allspark to return, so please. Even if you are going to die, hand the Allspark to Zero before you die. Gondo felt as if a knife stabbed into his heart. He could not see Zheng's expression since he was inside the Valkyrie. But a sense of terror suddenly fell upon him. He felt as though a cold, sharp sword was there right next to him. The sharpness made him shiver. Perhaps Zheng had not noticed it himself. His eyes at the moment looked sharp as a blade. He appeared to be walking casually with Tiger's soul in his hand, but every step he took embedded the floor with a 3 centimeters deep footprint. Gondo could not easily see the floor, but Wang Xia and Xian saw them clearly. As they looked to Zheng again, he looked nothing like the Zheng they knew. The killing intent he exerted was overwhelming. It felt like he would swing his blade at the next person he saw. Xian frowned and said to Wang Xia in a low voice. This is far enough. Plant as much plasma bombs as you have here, then you can go back up first. Zheng isn't looking right. It seems similar to the berserk state of the fourth stage that you mentioned. If that's the case, Xian frowned further, like something was making him think. Wang Xia nodded without a word. He stopped, then took the sky stick from Xian and began planting mines and timed bombs. In reality, he was starting to panic. He couldn't be sure, but he could tell a sense of determination from Xian's words. Was something unexpected going to happen in this mission? Has Zheng's berserk state returned? Is it going to be dangerous for Xian? Wang Xia's hesitation and worry aside, Zheng said. Are you worrying that I am going berserk again? Yes. Xian said candidly. It's what I am worrying. There is no information related to what the fourth stage is about because it reaches into the genetic layer and a person's consciousness. In simpler words, it's influencing genetics with a person's consciousness, which I cannot understand. Since I cannot understand, I will choose not to trust you for the time being. Zheng looked at Xian. His gaze was still sharp as a blade. It was an expression he never had before. He turned his head away and said, I do not know the scientific reasoning behind the fourth stage. But I want to let you know that I did not return to the initial berserk state. Zheng suddenly charged forward as he finished his sentence. Several robots of varying sizes appeared in front of the corridor. The frontmost robot fired an energy bullet at them. Zheng and Xian dodged it swiftly. The bullet hit the Valkyrie, then exploded. The explosion was on par with an anti-tank missile. Zheng was extremely quick. He activated instant destruction and Shore the instant he dodged the bullet and rushed to the robot with a speed beyond what the bare eyes could capture. The robot was not so big, at 4 meters tall. It was also quick to react. It flipped backward. Its hands pushed off the floor and threw itself back. Trying to run? Zheng's expression was colder than he ever was. Tiger's soul slashed forward the instant the robot's hands touched the floor. A mist-like white light blade flew across. He retrieved his sword. The robot only backed 2 meters when its body shattered into pieces and fell to the ground. That one slash cut the robot into thousands of little pieces. The pieces then exploded, causing a storm inside the corridor. The remaining robots weren't weak either. They were hugely different from the ones destroyed in the surface. A 10-meter tall robot shook its shoulders and transformed them into Gatling cannons. The cannons fired a series of energy bullets. Explosions followed one after another in the corridor. Another 7-meter tall robot leaped backward and transformed into a tank in 2 seconds. Its muzzle roared. Before the third robot could take action, the Gatling cannon robot suddenly flew backward. A man with a red sword stood at where it was. Zheng kicked the robot away, then threw out Tiger's soul. The tank exploded. The third robot seemingly saw a white tiger biting at the tank's barrel. The next moment, Zheng was standing on the remains of the tank. He pulled Tiger's soul out of the remains. A white misty aura swirled away. 2 spiky, black bat wings spread out from his back and shredded his clothes. The wings opened up to 3 meters long. You cannot protect the people important to you without power. You cannot fulfill the petty wishes you have without power. You can only do things against your heart without power. A crimson redness overtook Zheng's eyes. He bit his teeth and uttered as he turned to the last remaining robot. By the time the robot raised its gun, Zheng was already standing behind it. The energy bullet exploded inside the barrel and the robot also exploded. Oh! Gondo shouted in shock. Man, that's too impressive. I heard they talk about the terrifying power of Zheng in the fourth stage when he went berserk and thought that was an exaggeration. The fourth stage is too strong. He doesn't even need us to wipe out all the robots here. Xian shook his head. It can't be the berserk state. Otherwise, his sword would land on me first, given how much he hates me. Which means that this is the intermediate fourth stage. Xian pondered for a moment. Zheng's speed was astonishing right now. Xian didn't have the time to think and said to Gondo. Let's go. The mission has just begun. Charge into the core of the base, seize the Allspark, then run. Their target is only the Allspark. We will delay them for some time. As long as they can't get their hands on the Allspark again, we will be safe. Charge. Ahead of them, Zheng left behind a trail of metal remains. With the eyes of a blade and wings on his back, he charged through the corridor like a demon. Nothing moved on the path he went through, whether it be living or dead. There was a dark side within every person, and similarly, a bright side. No human could exist as pure evil or good. Such inconsistency was how we were. Zheng was also feeling contradicting. He did not want to go against his heart and let the hundreds of thousands of soldiers die, yet he also wanted to protect his comrades, to survive this movie without casualty. This contradicting thought prevented him from denouncing Xian. However, he could not peacefully face his true self and decided to run away from it. He handed everything to his instincts in the unlocked mode, the him that resided in the depth of his DNA. Perhaps there's really a demon hiding in my DNA, he felt such comfort after he let loose of himself, giving his control to the demon in his DNA. If he must describe this comfort in a word, it would be freedom. A freedom of both his mind and body, as though he could fly through the sky in an instant and split the earth in halves. He nearly drowned himself in this feeling, if it wasn't the last bit of reason held him back. However, this feeling was amazing. And this power overwhelming. Zheng felt as though time returned to the moment he unlocked the fourth stage when they went to steal the prototype T-virus in Resident Evil. He experienced the same delightful sensation. By the time he woke up, all the evolved lickers had been slaughtered. This power was hiding inside his DNA all along. Whether it was good or bad, and whether he could return to himself again or not was not questions he would consider now. Zheng sprinted among the incoming energy bullets. There was space big enough for someone to move through inside the seemingly crowded waves of bullets. Zheng's reaction speed was fast enough to catch this space. Sorrow gave him faster movement speed than the bullets. He sprinted through the corridor in the blink of an eye. Zheng's hand clawed at the frontmost robot. It was not too big, only 5 meters tall. After his hand clawed across smoothly, the robot was torn up into 5 sections at its chest. Zheng then kicked the remains of the robot off a few dozen meters away, knocking down numerous robots in the way. Strong. Incredibly strong. This adjective perfectly suited to the Zheng in this moment. His claw was tougher than the alloy body of the robot, and destroyed it in one hit. Zheng did not pause after kicking the robot away. He charged up then slashed his sword downward. A mist-like white light blade flashed across. The destroyed robot and those knocked down were shredded into centimeter-big pieces under the slash. Tiger's soul was nothing like a weapon anymore after the upgrade. It was closer to a magical item used by cultivators. The explosions and intense heat did not deter Zheng, as he walked toward the fires. He could not count how many robots he destroyed on the way, hundreds, or even 1,000. These robots weren't the newly created ones. These could all transformed. Their movements were quick and agile, almost as agile as the Valkyrie when Gondo entered the unlock mode. Their firepower filled the corridor with explosions the moment Zheng appeared. Still, Zheng went against such firepower and destroyed all of them. Most importantly, he did not even active explosion. He merely used a few instances of instant destruction. 3 minutes passed since the party entered the corridors. Qian and Gondo were almost sprinting this whole time despite Zheng being the one fighting. His breakthroughs were too fast that Qian and Gondo were barely catching up. The three of them charged through the main path and did not clear out the branching paths. As such, while they advanced, over 100 robots came out from the branching paths and chased them. Would you call this sandwiching? Gondo shouted. Qian. Didn't you say the final hydrogen bomb would clear out most robots? What's with this? I will haunt you if I die here. Qian glanced at the Valkyrie. His tone remained calm. This is the best case among my expectations. The 4 hydrogen bombs destroyed tens of thousands of robots. We would be nothing in front of those numbers. A single volley could kill our whole team. That won't be a battle, but war. An individual's power is always insignificant in a war. Gondo paused for a second and continued to shout. Then what should we do now? It's good that Zheng became so strong, but I can't be confident that he won't turn his sword at us. That thing is simply scary. One slash and a bunch of robots turned to pieces. If it lands on us, we are going to become human spaghetti. There's also 100 robots chasing from behind. I don't think I have the power to bring the Allspark up to the ground even if we were to obtain it. Qian said in a serious tone. I don't care what you think. This is a battle of no compromises. Do you wish to beg the Decepticons for mercy? Or live a little longer from running? Don't kid me. Gondo, I know you never wanted to die since the moment you entered this realm. And what's the outcome? If it weren't for the members of the team, you would have died in Starship Troopers. It's the same here. Fight with your life if you don't want to die. Don't keep asking like a child. We must succeed. Otherwise the Decepticons will only keep growing. Remember. You cannot drop the Allspark even at the cost of your life. The corridor brightened up. A huge open area appeared in front of them. A metallic cube floated in the center. The cube was not more than 2 meters in length. Intense electricity flowed down from the cube into the floor. It seemed like a pillar of lightning. Nearly 3,000 robots stood in this open area. Their guns fired at the exit of the corridor without a word. The explosions forced Qian and Gondo back inside. Zheng was the only one who charged out with his insane speed. He moved into the crowd of robots. Tiger's soul slashed across, sending out mist-like light blades. All the robots within 50 meters of him were shredded after a few strikes. As the robots exploded, he borrowed from the force of explosion and rushed toward the lightning pillar. Dong. Zheng's hand clawed at a red robot, but a light flashed in front of it. He only chipped off some scraps. The robot's armor looked vivid as if it was painted. Starscream. Don't fear. The newly evolved phase shift armor can defend against his attacks as long as you have energy. In this room, energy is never a problem for us. Protect the Allspark. Nearest to the Allspark was a huge robot almost 15 meters tall. A rainbow of colors were flashing on its armor. It appeared to be more advanced than Starscream's armor. This was probably the leader of the Decepticons, Megatron. He looked hundreds of times more powerful than the broken Optimus Prime. The Allspark had probably bestowed him the power during these days. Failing the claw, Zheng readied Tiger's soul for another attack. However, a brilliant light flashed over Starscream. The brightness of his armor declined and then an invisible shockwave struck Zheng. This force was powerful enough to knock Zheng back over 10 meters. He flapped his wings to halt himself in the air. However, he was 20 meters away from Starscream at this point. Countless bullets hit him and covered the place he was on with explosions. Zheng couldn't break out from the rain of bullets at once. Back at the corridor, Gondo attempted several times to rush out. He valued his life dearly, but he knew Zheng was the core of the team, and especially this battle. Once Zheng died, it would be the end of them. However, the sight of the firepower of these thousands of robots extinguished his courage time and time again. Before he decided whether to charge out, he noticed Qian pressed his glasses. His eyes turned sharp. The heck? Are main characters with sharp eyes the trend nowadays? While Gondo was confused, Qian moved. He disappeared from Gondo's sight the next instant.